Good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, depending on what side of the pond you're on, and welcome to Across the Pitch. My name is Phil Kennedy, and I'm here with my co-host Tony Robinson, where after about a year off, we are excited to be back in the saddle. And Across the Pitch, we're the soccer show for people who think messy is what my apartment was living with 6 dogs.
Good one. Nice one.
How you doing, Tony? You've kept things afloat here the past year. Well, I've been dealing with some different life situations, and I'm really, really happy to be back recording with you. And honestly, I've got a lot to catch up on here. When it comes to all things football. But first and foremost, Tony, thank you so much for keeping Across the Pitch alive for the past year. And how are you? And how are things up in Canada to get started off with?
Well, Phil, it's hard to believe it's a year ago since we last recorded, and going into, I think you mentioned to me when we were talking about the show, the first one was in 2018 in November. So it's a good time to come back. And to be honest with you, I'm thrilled, and I just want to say on behalf of everybody listening, welcome back, Phil. It's nice to have you back, and it's just not been the same without you.
Well, Tony, it definitely hasn't been the same without you either. And like you mentioned, this actually, is going to mark the 6-year anniversary of Across the Pitch. Over here stateside, we have a fairly big holiday called Thanksgiving, which is traditionally the final Thursday of November, so it doesn't fall on the exact same day every year. But as you mentioned, our very first episode was released on Thanksgiving, or I believe it was actually maybe the day after Thanksgiving in 2018. So with this release here, which actually falls on Thanksgiving 2024, we kick off what is season 7 of Across the Pitch, exactly almost kind of 6 years to the day as the very first episode. This is numbered episode 286, including unnumbered parts and things like that. We've got well over 300 episodes in our library for everybody to go back and listen to catch up on. And Tony, you've also written some fantastic articles over the past 12 months. We're going to get all of those up on our website. In the meantime, you can take a look at Facebook. Go to Across the Pitch on Facebook. You can also go to the Accrington Stanley Supporters Club of North America group on Facebook. Tony, you've kept both of those things going over the past year. So right now, let's start off by talking about where the team is at right now, which is 18th in the table, which is in the safety zone, but of course not where we want to be. Tony, tell us a little bit right now about the form that the team is in, and things that are what's going on with the club on the pitch right now as we speak.
Well, as you mentioned, the position we're in the league, it's a lot better now than it was after the first 8 matches, and really you can break this. We played 16 matches so far. You can break it into two halves, really. The first half, obviously played 8, only drew 3, and lost 5. The second 8. Record of 4 wins, 3 draws, and only 1 loss. So you can see there's a big change in form for the last 8 matches, and if you look at the points that we've dropped by conceding goals late in the frame in the second half, and from 85th minute on. I think Dan Jewell said it was over 10 points, and I thought it was somewhere around 9 or 10. But you take those points that if we hadn't dropped those points from winning positions, we'd be in the playoffs knocking on the door for the top 3. So I think when you look at the form they're in now, it's very encouraging, and they're getting it's the rate of 1 point.
We're better than where we stand at the table right now.
Oh, absolutely, and I think it's just getting the mindset. Still, they're still struggling with conceding late goals, but it's getting better. But they still have to get rid of that and nip that, because they seem to be in every match. And I think the turning point for me, when I saw them play against Port Vale and they were up 2-0, and they really played well and deserved to win that game. And then they gave 2 goals up them from the 89th minute, and then in the 96th and 97th minute. And that was sort of heartbreaking in the sense of how they conceded and how it did feel like a loss. And the same can be said the other day when we had a 2-goal lead and conceded 2 as well. But
yeah, that one was disappointing, because I really thought that we had 3 points in the bag there, and that would have been real nice. Now, Tony, one thing, but before we go too far, that I think that we should probably point out that it might be important, especially for our North American listeners. A majority of the time that we've been doing the podcast, Accrington Stanley has been in League One. In League One, you have the bottom 4 teams that get relegated down to League Two. However, now in League Two, only the very bottom 2 teams, the 23rd and 24th teams, go down to the National League. So in 18th place, we do have a bit more breathing room than we would have in League One, correct?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a good thing to keep in mind, because two teams drop out, but they drop out of the EFL, and the funding is not the same, and the teams are different, obviously. And but in the National League, it's littered with some teams that have a long history in the football league. But it's very important to a club of Accrington's size to keep its league status and stay in League Two, and build on it.
Yeah, I mean, as disappointing as it was a couple of years ago to fall from League One back down to League Two, at the end of the day, for a club of Accrington's size, like you said, staying in the football league is kind of the end-all, be-all. As long as we're in at least League Two, we're happy campers, right?
Well, yeah, you certainly when you're in League One, you've got that buffer of dropping down into another division and staying in the EFL. You don't have that luxury if you get in the bottom 2. And if you look at, as we're saying about the season so far, the last 8 matches, or let's go with the first 8 matches, they were only gaining points at, I think it's 0.375 points per match, which, that's relegation trouble every day of the week. The last 8 matches, they're averaging just under 2 at 1.875 points per match. You don't anticipate that to be maintained, but they certainly are setting themselves up for a consistent finish. And it really, if you look at there's 30 games left in the season, and if you look at last year, 42 points got you relegated. So if you had 43 or more, you stayed up. So you really want to aim for 45 plus, maybe 50 points. And that assures you of safety in the league. If you look at, say, getting 56 points out of the last 30 games, Stanley need to get around 9 or 10 wins, with 9 or 10, 11 draws. And then you can if you lose 10 to 12 matches, but you get points out of the other 20, then you're going to be well safe. But I think based on the play and one of the things that I did mention in one of the articles, and it was after the Port Vale match, which to me there was a goal goalkeeper area in the sense of being a bit of an indecision on Kelly's part for coming for a ball, and it ended up in the back of the net. It was hard to hard luck way base, but really it was the indecision by the keeper that I think really let the confidence. You could see the shoulders drop and everything, and it was at the time then when it was you can't change the full 10 players in the outfield, so you've got to make a change. And I think it was a time to bring in Creelin and let him have a go. And around the same time, they brought. Sorry,
Tony. No, I'm not to interrupt you, but speaking of players, one thing that I think that we should probably do. Since it has been a year since we've recorded here, and there's been quite a turnover in the playing staff. There's also been a change. I think that right around the time that we stopped recording or took our break was about the time that there was a change made with the management staff, which we'll talk more about that later. And first and foremost, congratulations to John Doolan on becoming manager of Accrington Stanley since the last recorded. Very well deserved. Before we talk about that, though, Tony, there's been a major turnover in playing staff, especially with us going from League One down to League Two. So, if somebody, for instance, hadn't really been following Accrington since the last time that we recorded, who are some of the players that we want to watch out for if we put Accrington on the I follow? And if you haven't been watching for the first 12 months, who are some guys that you want to watch out for?
Well, I think the loanees that they brought in this year might be. I know we had Brad Hills last year, played really well, but this group that they brought in may, as a group, may be the best yet. You've got young Zach Aw in the back, and he started off a bit slow. Had a couple of errors, and but he's really grown, and he's really playing well on that back three, and scored a heck of a goal the other day too on a given goal. So you look at him; he's playing really well. Young Jake Batty, who's out at the moment, I believe he's running again, and hopefully he'll be back soon from Blackburn Rovers. Another good player, got talent, and one that you could put in the squad at any time without any problem. You got Derek Costello come over from Burnley, who found his scoring touch a little while ago, and is playing up front there. He's doing well. One of the permanent signings that I'm just going through the team and names come to my head is Tyler Walton, who's really is 25, 26, come over from Southport, signed on, I believe, a 2-year deal, has really taken to this league and is really playing well. And he's playing up front. It's sort of a 2-striker role alongside Costello, and he's doing well. I'm trying to think of the other. If you look at the other loanee players, we've got, Sonny Al Jolfrey come over from Man United. His dad was a professional player, only 19 years old. Zakos 20, and then you got Ferran Rawson on the back, who came over from Morecambe, who's really improved and really playing well now. And then beside him, you got Sonny Al Jolfrey. It's hard to believe he's only 19. Very talented player. But when they went to those three at the back, and then with wing backs, it really made a difference to the point now. And then I'm trying. The other two players that they brought in, that's really sort of picked up and sort of helped kickstart the team in the midfield, is Ben Woods and Liam Coyle. I have to laugh about Liam Coyle. I know he's been out injury wise, but he's only had 3 yellow cards, and he says he's maturing and he's having that more controlled aggression now, and he's becoming a leader. And when those guys came in, and now Ben Woods is really he's been asked to play into a wingback role, but he's on the left side, and he's doing quite a good job. So when you brought those players in, they've both really played well. And then you've got.
Well, Tony, so now it sounds like there's been a lot of great acquisitions. It sounds like some great loan players, some great signings. Are there still some familiar faces that have been with the club a few years that our listeners might be familiar with from past seasons?
Well, yeah, and I think, as I said, I've mentioned Ben Woods and Liam Coyle are of course carryovers. When you look at the squad that's really turning out now, you've got Sean Wally that's out injured, but I mean when he's fit, he certainly would play in that number 10 role, and everybody will recognize Sean Wally and what he brings to the team at 37 years old. I just hope that it's not getting to the point where when you get in that age bracket where injuries seem to be, I don't know if you say more frequent or a little harder to recover from. Mm-hmm. And that's the same applies to Seamus Keneally, who started the season off and then has really, run into a bit of injury, but has been available coming on as a sub. And you've also got O'Brien now that is really is struggling to get in the squad, although he's playing internationally for Ireland for the under-21s. He's finding it tough to get in, but he does have a lot to offer when he comes on as a sub. So there's another fellow, a lone player that's Nelson Combeni, who scored a wonderful goal the other night. It's the first goal for the club, and he really he's really taken his opportunity and he's running with it. The problem is that they got 6 top quality loanee signings and they can only play 5 at once. And that meant at one point when they changed formations, unfortunately, Nelson was the odd man out in being a midfielder. He's the one that sort of sat on the bench because you had Creelan in nets. There's one, and then you have and Al Joffrey. There's 3 players there that are the lone players.
Tony, you mentioned a change in formation there. What is the formation that Accrington is playing most of the time right now?
Well, right now they're going basically. You could some may call it a 5 at the back, but it's basically 3 at the back and then 4 in midfield, with 2 of those are wing back positions, and then you got 1 in the number 10 role, and then you've got Costello and Walton that are up front. Recently, they've been alternating up with the top 3. They play 2 strikers and 1 in behind, and Josh Woods has been in that number 10 position with Costello and Walton up front, and they can really rotate those 3 around because Josh Woods has found
so almost like a 3-4-1-2. Yeah. Basically, that's the formation that they're using, and I think. We mentioned the 3 loanees players. That Batty's also a lone player. So is Combeni. There's 5, and then Costello is number 6. So there's your 6 players. All really could start in the team. But I think the best lineup they got right now, and this is if everybody's healthy, would be Al Joffrey, Rawson, and Haw at the back. The wing backs would be Batty and Ben Woods. And in the midfield would be Coyle. And a fellow we haven't mentioned, but has been a really good signing, is Donald Love. And I'll touch more about him in a second.
But then if Wally's healthy, I'd put him in the number 10 position in behind Costello and Walton. And I think that's possibly your best attacking and defensive lineup. Now, Donald Love, who came over from Morecambe with Rawson, sort of a quiet signing, but he's I'll tell you, you gotta like this guy. He really say you gotta love this guy, but he is really a player that's contributing a lot to the success. So like if he doesn't play, you got Kumbenny that can play in that position as well.
So, Tony, speaking of success, Accrington Stanley had success at the opening round of the FA Cup. They've been able to advance to the second round, which means our next match that they have coming up is in the second round of the FA Cup. It is at home. We get Swindon Town, who's currently 22nd in League Two, so they're about 4 spots below us in the standings. And given that the match is at home, I have to think that we're going to be favored, and I like our chances to move on. Of course, anytime you win at the FA Cup, the amount of money that you get can be big to a team of Stanley's size. So what are you looking forward to on Saturday, Tony?
Well, I think, on paper we should be favored. I'm not sure that there'll be a lot of people sort of jumping on that bandwagon. I think this is a game that could be a banana skin for Accrington if they don't watch themselves. This when they played a couple of weeks ago and had to score, they were down 2-1 and came from behind to get a point at the Wham. So they're a team that Stanley can beat. And I'm assuming, based on what John Doolan has done so far, is that he'll put out his best starting 11. And I think in the FA Cup you can play 6 lone players, which this when you talk about a rebuilding season, it's hard to believe that you're relying on 6 lone players. But yeah, I think really. Right. If you get through this round, not only the prize money, but you also have the chance of drawing against a big club in round 3 when the championship and the Premier League teams come in. So that's
once you get to round 3, that's where the money is. It's Swindon Town. They're from Wiltshire, which is. From looking at the map, it's southwest of London, so it's quite a travel. I don't imagine there's going to be a huge away base for that match.
Well, I think they did have a few hundred fans travel up a couple of weeks ago, and I'm thinking that they'll bring a fair number because. The FA Cup is a trophy and matches that a lot of people get excited about, and it's a little more special than the regular league game. So I wouldn't be surprised if they don't bring a decent support crowd with them. Swindon had a tough. They lost at home last week to Morecambe, so they're hurting, and their record. Really, if you look at the last 6 matches, they haven't won a match. They've only drawn 2, so they're a bit fragile in the confidence department. So I think it's important that we come out strong and take the lead and don't come from behind, because I think this is a team that if they get ahead, they may hunker down. So it's going to be a tough match, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, you don't want to get behind her. You think they're going to park the bus on us, is what you're saying.
Yeah. And I think if Wally isn't ready to go, well, Josh Woods could slot in there behind. He's got a lot of energy and runs around and never gives up and always tries. And I think you've got to give him a lot of credit for that. And he's also, as I said, found the net. So I think you may see Love if Batty's not ready, may see Love on the wing-back position and then Kumbeni in the middle, which really you don't lose a lot when you make those changes. I mean, I would like to see Wally over Josh Woods, but Josh Woods has proven the last few matches what he's played that he's ready to give it a go at this level, and so it all depends if Batty and I'm not sure if any of those players might be cup tied. I didn't check on that before, because if any of those players are cup tied from their parent club, they'll have to sit out. Mm-hmm. But as far as I know, I don't know of any now at this point. But that's
Saturday. The kind of stuff that I'm going to need a few weeks to get caught up on myself. But before we move on here, Tony, give me a prediction for Saturday.
Well, I'm going to go with a 2-1 Stanley win.
2-1 Stanley. Yeah, I like that, and I think that I can get on board with that. So, but before we move on to some other things here, the last thing I want to kind of touch on is after Saturday we've got a quick turnaround. I got a league match on Tuesday, December 3rd, against Grimsby Town. That's an evening match. Now to me, this match it's definitely going to be tough because it's a road game. It's going to be a quick turnaround after the cup match, but it might be a little bit misleading because right now Grimsby is 9th in the standings, but if you look at their goal differential, they're a -7. Meanwhile, Stanley at 18th in the standings, their goal differential is a -4. So maybe Grimsby is not quite as good as their standings. What are your thoughts on that, Tony?
Yeah, I think they're, if you look at their form, they're sort of hit and miss, really. They've got 2 wins in the last 6 matches, 3 losses and a draw. So they're sort of, well, I wouldn't say they're in the best of form, but I mean, they're 8th when you look at it. But, they're the way Stanley has played and the points, unfortunately, points they've dropped, if they hadn't dropped those points, and I know we talked about this, but it's a fact, and you can't ignore it. Is Stanley would be right up there in and around or above Grimsby. So I think Stanley can play with them. I don't think they should go in as an underdog, but I think if you look at, as I say, in the last 8 matches overall in the league, Stanley's form puts him in the top 3 or 4. So there's no reason to believe that they're going to take a step back in the way they play. So I think when you look at them going into a match now, you can look at the standings and say, well, Grimsby's number is 8th. But if you look at the form table, they're Grimsby and Stanley are probably not far off each other. So I think, they're going to give them a go. And I know when you're away, you'd like to get a win, but a draw is nothing to be ashamed of if you're playing at Grimsby on a Tuesday night.
That's exactly my thought. To me, it's a game that we can win, but all things considered, being on the road, quick turnaround after Saturday, a team that is above us in the table, even if that might not be kind of their true form, if you will. I think I'd be happy if we get any points out of that, and that means, obviously you want the 3, but I won't be disappointed if we get out of there with at least a draw.
Well, yeah, and if you look at the table, I mean, we're 3 points out of 17th, but also 3 points out of 13th spot. And if you look at the goal difference, -4, Fleetwood are 13th with a -5 goal difference. And you talked about Grimsby. Stanley have found their scoring and are scoring in pretty well every match. They've got 22-4, and they've tightened up on the back, conceding 26. But if you look at the first 8 matches, they had conceded 18. So in the second part of that 16-game schedule, they've only conceded 8 goals and scored 13. That's a +5 in the last 8 matches, Phil, which is, I think, is a telling stat.
Grimsby's also conceded 26. So I mean, certainly, defense seems to be the weak spot for both sides. But like you mentioned, Stanley's definitely tightened up over the last half of the season so far.
Yeah, and if they can stop this conceding late, and then there's no reason why they can't climb the table. I mean, you're going to look at getting safe first, but I think if they continue on with their form, there's no reason why this team, because of the tightness in the middle of the division, if you get 2 or 3 wins, you'll jump up 5 or 6 spots, and then all of a sudden you're not far off the playoff position. So I think this next month is going to be important. And then when you come into the Christmas period, if they can be sort of mid-table by Christmas time, then anything's possible. So we'll just have to wait and see. But you got to win your home matches, and try and get some points on the road.
That's the way. League One and League Two both always seem to kind of be that way, where the tables, even the championship, you're just, it's so tight that if you go on a 3-game winning streak and get 9 points over the course of 10 days, all of a sudden you could jump up 5, 10 positions in the table.
Yeah, and I think the crowd at the Wham has really sort of come alive too in the second half of the season. And, when I was at the Port Vale match when they conceded 2, and that's actually a good kind of segue into what I was going to talk about next. So Tony, you've already been over to England and seen the team play in person this year. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your travels and what you did while you were over there? Well, if I, other than having a few pints, I mean that took a large chunk of the trip. Well, yeah, you're over there visiting friends and family, and you're trying to get a year's socializing done in 2 months. So, which was nice, and we have friends that we socialize with, and every couple of weeks we'd have what we call a whiskey tasting evening, where each one of the 3 couples and each one of the fellows would bring the 2 bottles of whiskey, and then we'd each test the whiskey and decide which one was the best. Now, when we say testing, we're testing. We're not having big 2-ounce shots or anything like that. But that was a lot of fun, and I'm trying to educate them. My 2 friends, they're not big football fans in the fact they don't really attend games, but they're starting to learn more about Stanley because I keep going on about them, and they ask me about when I'm at the matches too. But I think a couple of things that just as far as the one thing I wanted to mention was there's a room off the hospitality called the Snug. It holds about 50 people, and there's a fella that took over that this year. He sort of said, I'd go to the club. Can I take sponsor that room and take it over running the room? A fellow by the name of Stuart Rogan of HML Recycling, and their sponsor of the team as well. And he had us in as guests in the Snug, which was tremendous. And he's a really nice fellow. Enjoys Stanley, big support of them, and it was quite an experience to be a guest in his room there. So we thoroughly enjoyed that, and thank him for that. There was one other thing I wanted to mention, and it's regards to a fellow by the name of John Bryan, who sadly passed away, and it was a big contributor to the Accrington Stanley fans page. And I was at a coffee afternoon.
Not a bigger Stanley supporter out there than John.
Oh yeah, I mean he traveled up and down the highway.
Really sad see sad news for the fan base as a whole, for sure.
Yeah, he followed the all different levels of the club, and he watched them, the youth levels and the youth team and everything. So he knew a lot about the club and very, very passionate about it. And it was in a coffee afternoon that I went to, and on the way out, this fella called me over, and he said, and my name's John Bryan. He said, I said, oh, John, how are you? Nice to meet you. And we've communicated on the Facebook page, and talked about Stanley. And sometimes I disagree with his opinion. Sometimes he disagree with mine. But it was all in the right sense of the passion for the club, and in a good. A good way to do it, and good conversations. And I said, we were chatting away, and I said, John, I said, I'm sorry, I have to head out because I got to catch my bus. And he said, which way are you heading? And I told him I was going to Great Harwood. He said, I'll give you a ride. And so John kindly drove me to the next town over, Great Harwood, and dropped me off. And we had a good chat on the way over. And he said, people think I'm negative about the club. And I said, John, you're entitled to your opinion, and your opinion is valued. And when you point something out, then it's coming from the heart. And I thanked him for the ride. And then I was saddened to learn of his passing. So, yeah, it was, I'm glad I got to spend a few minutes with him. And, he knew his stuff. And, it's a big loss for the club and for the fan page too. So that's my John Bryan story. But
well said, Tony. Well said, and definitely a big loss to the community, because like you said, he followed the club on every level there was, and sounds like like you said, the guy that if you need a ride, he's there. Even if he's only known you for 10 minutes, he'll give you a ride and get you where you're going. So definitely a class act who'll be missed in the community. And now just to kind of change topics a bit, but also stay on the same topic. And so I mean, there's certainly something that we need to at least address. I don't want to spend a tremendous amount of time on it, because one, it has been over a year now since everything happened, so I don't want to rehash something that has been talked into the ground. But we do at least need to acknowledge the fact that John Coleman and Jimmy Bell are no longer at the helm of Accrington Stanley, and now, like I said, John Doolan has taken the role. Well deserved. I think he's doing a fantastic job. But before we get into our thoughts, one thing that I'm interested in is, Tony, when you were over visiting, what does the overall the fan base as a whole seem to think about the manager situation?
Well, there's obviously there's a lot of people still that are fans of John Coleman and Jimmy Bell because of what they've done for the club over the 20 years, spread over two sessions. And we are here at Across the Pitch are thankful because they supported us and made numerous guest appearances on our show. And so, unfortunately, it is what it is now, and you've got to go forward. And John Doolan, who knows the club, was the logical appointment. And it was a bit of a struggle, once he took over, because he still had the team that John and Jimmy put together. Then he started to make some changes in the off season, and you can see now it's starting to pay off. So like you say, we wish him well. There'll always be that group of fans that think John and Jimmy are done by, but it is a fact of life in the world of football. Probably if managers are more susceptible to being fired than probably any other profession. I know people have said you're hired to be fired when you're a football manager, and the life expectancy is not that long. So we were spoiled at Stanley by having two people that were committed lifelong to the club. I think, it's been documented, when they left and how it was handled. And I think that's when we don't need to touch on that at all now.
That's exactly what I don't want to get into.
No.
Things like that, because we weren't there. We don't know what happened behind closed doors. We only know what's happened in public. That's already been discussed. And at the end of the day, I think that everybody who's an Accrington Stanley fan is forever going to be thankful to John Coleman and Jimmy Bell for everything that they did for the club over 20 years, that the 4 promotions, that, they certainly did more than enough to be able to keep their jobs through one relegation like they did. And it gets to a point where sometimes, if Bill Belichick can be fired, and, English football fans might not know who that is, but Tony, I know you do. So if Bill Belichick can be fired, and if you don't know who he is, look him up, then anybody can be fired. And that's, like you said, whether it be English football, American football, Australian rules football, basketball, baseball, doesn't matter. Coaches in general or managers in general have a shelf life. They, like you said, are already said, hired to be fired. And you can be the best manager in the world. But even if you're the best manager in the world, at some point, maybe you're going to make some mistakes in recruiting. You're going to bring in some wrong players. Maybe you're just going to reach a point where your voice in the locker room just isn't getting heard the way that it used to be. There's a million things that it doesn't necessarily take away from anyone's ability as a manager. But sometimes, for any two people to be, even though it was over 2 stints, for any two people to be in charge for 20 years in any professional sports franchise, that's just unheard of. It doesn't happen. And, I think that they're just inevitably, it's going to come to a point where there's going to be a time to make a change. I think that, if you go back to the Dallas Cowboys in the late 1980s when they moved on from Tom Landry, there was a lot of people who didn't like the way that they did. And I'm not saying that I agree with the way that they moved on from Tom Landry. But when they did, they brought in Jimmy Johnson, and within 5 years, they had won 3 Super Bowls in 4 years. So, you could be the greatest manager in the world, and sometimes it's just time to move on.
Well, I think at the end of the day, it's the owner's decision and the board, and you could look at it where he gave them an opportunity to right the ship, and things didn't seem to progress in his mind, and he made the call. You get relegated, and 9 times out of 10 you're gonna get let go. But at the end of the day, now it's John Doolan's team. He's put his stamp on it. I think the fans are behind him, and you can sense that when the team's playing well, the fans are behind the club and behind, at the end of the day, behind Andy Holt, because you got to respect, as a chairman, it's the final decision rests with him. And right now, after the second batch of 8 games, things seem to be working in that direction. So, we've got to give got to give the John Doolan some leeway, and he's gonna be there.
So Tony, are you saying that it's an exciting time to be a Stanley fan again?
Well, I think it is after this last 8 matches. I think there's still that when they get up a lead is they need another one. Obviously a 2-0 lead is not big enough at times, but they're scoring and they're creating chances and they're going forward. With the wing backs now, they're playing more of a north-south game as opposed to going side by side. And there's been a little question of Krellin in a couple of his decision making in the last couple of games. But I don't think you can make the change back yet right now. I think you got to play through it. Unfortunately, Andy Dibble, who's the goalkeeper coach, is going to be on leave. He's having a knee replacement, so I believe his replacement.
Let's wish him a quick recovery.
Yeah, a speedy recovery to Andy, and we wish his replacement, a fellow by the name of David Rouse, all the best, and hopefully he can have success with the goalkeepers he's got to work with. So it's a good time right now. As their play improves, you go into a game now with the expectations they can come out with a result, as opposed to in the first 8 where it was sort of like they were conceding too many goals in the first 2 or 3 matches. It was, the dams were open and the water was flowing in, kind of thing. But a lot of credit's got to go to Ferran Rawson at the back, and how he's brought those 2 young lads together. And I'm pleased with the change in formation and the change of playing players, to the point where he's got a 3 or 4 players that can really come in and interchangeable now. And the other day, young Henderson came in and got an assist, and he's had to bide his time. And the same with, as I said, with O'Brien. If he comes on, as a wing back or takes one of those wing back positions, you don't really lose anything with him coming on. Very talented player. And I think, when they talk about in North America where you have that sophomore jinx, where your second year you might drop a little bit. I think it's not come as easy to Henderson and to O'Brien as it did in the first year. And it's a lesson to be learned, is that you really got to keep pushing on and improving all the time, because nothing in this league is given to you. When you earn your shirt, you got to keep it. And those 2 lads have got a bright, brilliant future, driving them to improve themselves.
Great stuff, Tony. Well, I'll tell you what. Here we're crawling up here towards the 1 hour mark, and for a first episode back, we have covered a tremendous amount. And I just want to say, Tony, your knowledge is just absolutely second to none. And
you put it on top of a pinhead.
What's that?
I said you could put my knowledge on the top of a pinhead.
No, not at all, Tony. I'm in catch-up mode, so right now for at least the next few episodes, you're going to be carrying the show as you did today. And I just want to tell you one more time that I cannot thank you enough for keeping the brand going for the past 12 months. But before we wrap up, what did you have that we hadn't talked about so far today? I wanted this last 10 minutes to be whatever you wanted to talk about.
Well, I just want to give a shout out to some fellows that I've got to befriend at the club, and a fellow by the name of Stephen Pye, who actually picks me up in Great Harwood and takes me and my wife to the match, and we've got to know his group that in the snug, and there's his friend Stephen, and then there's the 2 Phils, Phil Ross and Phil Hodgson, and those guys, travel up and down the country.
Those Phils are trouble, I'll tell you.
Well, and they traveled down the other night to watch MK Dons. these guys are big fans and knowledgeable, and I spent some time with them, sitting with them. And also a shout out to Alex Crook, who really runs now that Accrington Stanley fan page. And Alex, he's another big supporter of Stanley. Travels a lot all over the place to watch him. Knows his stuff inside and out. Always has a smile on his face. And I got to sit behind him in the stands when I was over there, and listening to him talk about the match. And we had conversations ongoing, analyzing the match, and it was a lot of fun. So there's some. I think the point I'm getting across is what's coming through in what we've talked about is that the people and the supporters of Stanley are a true family, and if they accept you into their family. Me coming over from Canada, granted, I'm originally from there, but I haven't lived there in years. I'm a Canadian now. When I'm over there, I'm a Canadian in England, and but for all those people to be kind and accepting, and it just goes to show you not only the people they are, but the club, that they support.
That's the reason that we started this show to begin with, is just, for 5,000 miles away in Phoenix, Arizona, we knew something special was happening in Accrington.
Yeah, and it's there's everybody at the club. They wear several hats. It's not that they have a big support staff. Everybody does more than one thing, but they've got quality people in there. And I'm fortunate to be able to work with Luke Pearson, the media person at Stanley.
Yeah. Actually, so Tony, speaking of quality people, what have we got coming up on the next episode?
Well, we're working on a special guest, and I'm waiting. I was hoping to have confirmation today. In fact, let me check my phone, because I was supposed to get a notification back. But we are working on a special guest for mid-December. And if that comes through, we'll put it out on our social platforms. But
really excited for the potential guests.
Me too. And
Luke Pearson, who's the media director, and we're gonna have some guests coming up in 2025 for sure.
Yeah, and we're talking about getting on a couple of players a month for interviews. People, the players that people may not know a lot about, and I think one of our goals is not only to sort of interview players for the sake of interviewing them. We want to document their time at Stanley, because when you look back at some of the episodes that were done several years ago, we've got people that we interviewed that are legends of the club, that have seen that. When you talk to Alex Henderson and say about people who he watched when he was sitting on the stands, in the stands watching them as a kid, and he talks about Scott Brown, Mark Hughes, and players of that nature. And you look back and go, we've interviewed those guys, and so we're documenting players. It might not seem a big thing at the time, but when you look back, and if we interview, we can get, say, Sonny Al-Jolfri on there, and in 2 or 3 years he's playing for United, then it's something that we can sort of, document his growth as a football player, his time at Stanley.
Like, Jordan Clark, we had him on, and he's played in the Premier League now.
Yep. Yeah, and so it's not just interviewing players, just find out who they are. It's to get it's a show where the club is in that period, in that time frame, and so I think we've done something right in the sense that the podcast has been around for several years, and we're probably one of the longest running episodes in the EFL as far as and there's some really great podcasts out there, and we're fortunate now that we're established that we're asked to go on as a guest to preview Stanley. We've done that for several teams, but we sort of want to be supportive of the club and document the club. And as I say,
Exactly.
with the support of the team, or else without the support of the team, we wouldn't be able to do a show, because you've got to offer more than just your opinion when you're doing this show from North America. So, and I thank the club and everybody for their support. And
we can't thank the club enough for their support. And like you said, Tony, I mean, documenting the history of the club is one of the main reasons that we're here. And Tony, I'm really, really excited to be back recording with you. I've had a great time chatting Accrington football here with you today. I look forward to recording with you here again in a few weeks, and I think we're going to have a great season number 7, and I think that we're going to see Accrington climbing the table, and we'll be here to document that.
Yeah, and it's nice to have you back. I know people, when I was over there, were asking about you and how's Phil, and it's hard to sometimes comprehend that you're in Phoenix on the other side of the States, and I'm up in the southern part of East Canada. And we've been doing this for a while now together, and we've never actually physically met. But
we'll have to make that a priority for sure.
Yeah. One of these days we'll fix that up. But yeah, it's nice to be back, and it's nice to have you back, and I'm glad you're back in the swing of things. And I know you've got a handful with those 6 dogs of yours, and I don't know, maybe I certainly wouldn't be adding to that. I think 6 might be enough. If not, for me, it's too many, but that's you're a dog lover, so God bless you for doing that.
Well, thank you, Tony. And yeah, for right now, I've got all the dogs I can handle. But more than anything else, I'm happy to be back, and I thank you for everything that you do for the show to keep us going here over the past year. And as always, let's count to 3, and I'm sure you remember how we finish things up. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. On Stanley! Cheers.
A bit rusty on that one, but cheers, Phil.
Have a great one, Tony, and happy Thanksgiving here for the States.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving to every one of our American listeners. Enjoy your turkey.